What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Josh Button Podcast, episode 24, I believe. The man who dares not offend cannot be honest. Thomas Paine, I believe that quote is from. So much truth in it, because we will turn a blind eye to basic facts for the feelings of our friends, of our associates, of those around us. More often than not, it seems. But is that really being honest? I cannot help but imagine most people, especially with what we've seen in the last few weeks, are doing little more than virtue signaling who they think they will upset or piss off or offend the least. It seems that way to me. I'm pretty sure it seems that way to a lot of people, especially when you're talking about war. Look, war has casualties, it has severe consequences. Most of us should be aware of that, even if we do live in a pillowed environment here in the West. Comfort is delusional in more ways than one. We cannot possibly understand reality for the most of the world living in the environment that we live in. And I'm not complaining, I'm certainly grateful. However, the wake-up call would be such a rude awakening for so many people if they had to spend any amount of time living the life of a lot of people that live abroad. I want to know if you can see it yet, if you're starting to realize we are just as much at war as Israel and Palestine or Ukraine and Russia, and it's a different kind of war. We know that there's an information war going on. This is so beyond obvious that you would have to be literally living under a rock not to admit that and to be aware of it. And the consequences of misinformation, which so many of us were accused of a few years ago, is great. It's great. A lot of people made poor medical decisions based upon information and misinformation. And what was portrayed as misinformation a few years ago, we now have come to the conclusion it was just the opposite. So the institutions that were created to either serve us or enslave us have been doing their jobs, and the people that have diligently researched or at least informed themselves before making decisions have realized that most of these institutions are the purveyors of misinformation. 100%. Look at all the experts that if you would have trusted and believed not that long ago, you would have done more harm to yourself than good. What about now with this war and these wars? There are large communities that will be offended by the truth right now. And there's small communities that will be offended by the truth. Wherever you're at, you may be in the midst of a large or a small community. Either side of these issues that will be offended by you speaking the truth, or at least asking the questions that could possibly lead you there. And if you've been paying attention the last few years, there's a lot of questions that you're not allowed to ask unless you want to be canceled. And cancel culture has never, ever, ever been as clear and opaque as it is now. I hate to even use his name, but Kanye West wasn't very long ago, said some things and did some things that got his banking removed, had him canceled from contracts, Adidas, and had his image tarnished and somewhat destroyed in the media. He lost management. He had all kinds of severe penalties for speaking things that people deemed either A, misinformation, or hate. And is it hate really to ask questions or to make statements that are based in truth? Because whether you agree with him or not, a lot of the statements that he did make were based in truth. They were based in facts from his own personal experiences. And if you are bringing up relevant information and facts that you are canceled for or that you are severely reprimanded by powerful organizations and individuals, well, why? Why would that be the case? Why are there people in powerful positions that we are not allowed to criticize or ask questions about? Especially when we've seen firsthand evidence in repeated situations in which it does not seem like they are being forthright or honest. And look, I, in my lifetime, have criticized the United States government more than any of my friends and associates, going back to 9/11, and then some. And I have offended friends and associates and family members with that. But it was irrational on their part because instead of debating the information that I presented, they had an emotional response which was irrational because they were tied to these organizations or individuals in one way or another. Republicans getting absolutely, well, pissed off when you question Republicans, and Democrats getting pissed off and triggered when you question Democrats. These political parties are both in the wrong more often than they're in the right, and they have not served our interest. You have to be aware that your emotions will be manipulated by situations and by presentations of the mainstream media. They do this on purpose. They do this to elicit a response. They do this to elicit support on either side of the aisle or on both sides of the aisle. I think we're at a point in time in history where, although everybody is so easily offended, we need to put our emotions on the back burner and stop rushing to the defense of situations and scenarios and people and organizations that we haven't actually diligently researched or even tried to understand their motives or the possibility that they do not have our best interest at play. I had this week an associate that was very upset with one of my posts on social media because they could not debate the information contained within. They could not confront the possibility that the information was factual. And maybe they didn't care. I can't make that judgment. Whether it was a complete blinders situation where they just refused to acknowledge, hey, this is a possibility, or whether it triggered them so much so that they could not and would not possibly address it. And this is a problem. This is a problem because all of us rushing to the defense of people out of emotional response will leave us all in awful predicaments where we're all at war with each other. Look at prophecy. I don't know what your individual religion is, but of all the religions, there are prophecies that are somewhat heinous prophecies of war and a dark future, which is made to make some people feel hopeless, in my opinion, and made to make people understand that judgment is coming of some sort. Regardless of your beliefs, it should be within your realm of consciousness to have some compassion for those around you and for innocent victims of war. I mean, it should be common sense. You would think it's common sense, but so many people are desensitized and their emotions are played with so strongly that they will call for heinous things. We were attacked on 9/11, and we were made to view an entire swath of religious people and an entire part of the world, a region of the world, as our enemies, as our nemesis. And we had to seek retribution. They had to pay the ultimate price for this attack on America. The post that I was referring to a minute ago was an Army colonel who said the military knew who was actually behind 9/11, and if the public were to, then the justice that they would demand would be obliteration of Israel. Because Israel and Saudi Arabia, but Mossad specifically and CIA, had assets, and there's plenty of evidence pointing to the facts that they had involvement in 9/11, and that this was not terrorist Osama bin Laden and some of his co-conspirators from the caves of Afghanistan or Iran or Iraq or Pakistan that pulled this off. And if nothing else, perhaps they had involvement for just the propaganda that would be used after the fact. Lucky Larry Silverstein knew something was coming. Look him up. Check out his insurance policies. Look up the dancing Israelis who were detained on 9/11 and let go. Look at George W. Bush in the classroom as 9/11 were happening and the things that the teacher were saying to the kids and the things that they were repeating. Look at the way the buildings came down. Donald Trump himself questioned the narrative based upon the construction of the buildings, the steel towers that were actually built and created to withstand just the scenario that they had supposedly encountered with planes flying into them. Jet fuel has not melted steel beams in history. It's just not possible. It's not what happens. It's not what occurs. And those buildings all look like controlled demolition. The reports on the day of 9/11 about explosives in the building and the way they came down and the testimony from ground zero that were scrubbed from the internet, the things that were completely, what's the word for it? They were just admonished by the mainstream media and they were hidden in the official 9/11 report. I mean, there's plenty of people online and experts and books that have questioned it all and proven that the story we were given was just not factual. That NORAD had to stand down in order for this to occur. So many question marks around it that you kind of have to do a little bit of digging because of your misbelief. You can't believe it. I'm sorry, you cannot believe it. Not if you look at it rationally, not if you actually check into it, look into it. You cannot possibly believe the narrative that we were fed. And then, after the fact, you cannot possibly believe George W. Bush and this administration and our government all believed there was weapons of mass destruction to go into Iraq for. You cannot believe the Osama bin Laden body story. We killed this man. We dropped him out of an airplane into the ocean right after. All the evidence of taking him out was concealed. All of the Navy SEALs and special forces that were responsible all died mysteriously. So many question marks around all of it that lead you to believe you've been lied to. And then you find the swaths of information and the evidence supporting alternative misinformation, they'll call it, information related to those attacks. I brought up the USS Liberty a time or two in this podcast, and that was a American reconnaissance vessel that was attacked by Israel. And after Israel knew it was an American intelligence gathering ship, continued the attack. For us to question the Israeli government after all of the evidence we have found, uncovered, shared, is completely rational. It is completely rational to try and understand Israel at that point, and the Balfour Declaration, which was written in 1917, I believe, well ahead of World War II. Yet World War II and Nazi Germany was the tool used to implement Israel, the state, the Zionist state. If our government would do all of the things that we know they will do, is in the way of propaganda, misinformation, and experiments and war on behalf of bankers or the war machine itself, we have to question our own government repeatedly. And we have to see if what they're feeding us, what information they're giving us, is actually factual. And we have to question all of the narratives from Israel, from Ukraine, from Russia, from China. China has persecuted Muslims for years. They have a serious epidemic of organ harvesting. They have child slavery. They have all kinds of humanitarian issues that need to be addressed and they need to be held responsible for. But if we're afraid of offending Chinese people by actually bringing these things to the surface or conversing about them, well, we can't tell the truth. The reality is you're going to offend people when you speak the truth. And we should dive headfirst into it because the truth is the only way to set ourselves actually free. Usury. The banking worldwide, the credit extension at interest that is just absolutely enslaving needs to be addressed. Those in charge need to be addressed. They need to be held accountable. Regardless of who this finds in the guilty party, we need to hold them accountable. Kanye said the Jews run the media, Jews run Hollywood, Jews run our government. These may be fake Jews. These may be Khazarian mafia. But they hold Israeli passports, dual citizenship with Israel. Why is that? Why do so many pedophiles leave the United States and go to Israel? Why is that? Are you offended by the question? Are you offended by the possibility that this country, that this government harbors criminals, that they protect the worst kind of criminals we have? Seriously? Pedophiles? You have to confront this information, not get offended by the person that presents it to you. Go ahead. Debunk it. Debunk the situation in Gaza. There's most definitely terrorists and evil people in Palestine. There's most definitely evil people in Israel. There is most definitely two sides to this war and two sides to every story of and involving war. There's propaganda on both sides of the border. We know this. This is not up for debate. We've seen it on our social media after people respond to the absolute heinous images that come across their phones or their tablets and then realize that was staged and it was theater. And the things that they demanded from this were not justified in themselves. We have to criticize all parties involved. All these governments are complicit in wrongdoing. It's just not up for debate. I see Republicans online cheering and celebrating this Mike Johnson guy getting the House majority vote, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Who cares? Their first thing he says when he takes the position, the speaker position, is that they were going to draft a bill to send more money to Israel. First thing. Have we not got enough problems here that they would choose to address them first? Donald Trump's America First argument and campaign slogan is, it's completely far-fetched to these people. Why? Why is it so far-fetched? You have to ask yourself that question. Why do they allow the homeless situation here to be in the current state that it is? Why? They do not have your best interest in mind. They are bought and paid for. They are. It's obvious. We cannot be celebrating these small victories in politics in a system which is absolutely not for our true best interest. It's overplayed its hand so many times. They keep you on the hook with these little victories, these things that you think are little victories, just to backslap you with reality as soon as your emotions are manipulated and played. It's a roller coaster of disappointment. And I guess in life, disappointment is expecting something. And God's timing is far better than any of ours. I will completely agree with that and share that. Because I've been disappointed many times in my life when I just didn't have the patience or the fortitude at that moment to live, to let things that are not within my control go and just do my best at that present moment and going forward. Today is the most important day of your life because there are no guarantees for tomorrow. If we're spending every single day having our emotions manipulated by propagandists, well, we are losing life. We are losing precious life source. And reality is being distorted by our emotional responses and constant regurgitation of disappointment. I refuse to let myself be manipulated into disappointment daily. That's one of the absolute greatest things about going out to the park with my dog and training him, or going to jiu-jitsu and training with my friends. Even when I'm getting my ass kicked in jiu-jitsu, my mind is there in the moment. It's present, and it is, no matter what, I'm protecting my neck so I don't get choked out. I'm there. I'm gaining something. I'm learning something. I'm defending myself and making myself stronger. I am not being played by propagandists or people that would like to harness and harvest my energy on something that's irrelevant to my life. Honestly, people, we have to mature in this way. We have to mature to the understanding that our emotions have been manipulated by the people in power that we've given megaphones to, the people that are on stage presented as authorities, as people that are supposed to be acting on our behalf and clearly are not. All of them. We need to start either A, ignoring them, or B, taking our power back away from them. Consciously focusing on today, the most important day of your life, of my life, of all of our lives, and improving our own conditions the best way we can. and demanding that those people in these positions of supposed authority are held to account for their actions. Forget what they're saying and these little victories that they're trying to present to us. Cannot be manipulated by anymore. There is no Trump 2024 after we've seen what happened in 2020. Until people are held responsible and we are given absolute knowledge that we have a fair electoral process and that the people that have dual citizenship in our government and the people that have foreign allegiances are rooted out completely, then we have no faith in them. We cannot possibly have any faith in them or any of the little wins that they're trying to present to us. Rhinos, Republicans, and Democrats alike. It's all theater, and I am not participating. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm hopeful for some intervention. Still, I am still conscious and cognitive of the reality that most of the stuff that we've been watching has been theater, or that the possibility that the theater of old has been replaced, and that we are watching the systematic destruction of the old guard. But our emotions are still being manipulated. And we still have people out there that are acting the most irresponsible, irrational ways possible. Come down off the ledge, people. Get off the ledge. There is something you can do right now in your life, in your immediate, controllable circumstances and situations to make the world a better place, rather than feeding into a system which is doing truly nothing more than harvesting our energy. Bitcoin's up. Hey, look, I'm no expert. I don't know what to tell you about the financial system, if it's going to crash like completely, or if we're truly watching this great reset, and if it's going to lead to freedom or whether it's going to lead to further tyranny. But there are a lot of credible sources out there that have offered very moving arguments to support Bitcoin and to steer clear of CBDCs with all your effort. So maybe it is. Maybe that Bitcoin standard is coming. A lot of people are talking about the gold standard. Look, I'm down with investing in gold and silver, and potentially anything that isn't Wall Street and the same investment mentality that we've had, the Ponzi's that we've had our whole lifetimes. And any way the central bank can meet its maker, so to speak, can be destroyed, I'm all for it. I'm all for elimination of usury. And I'm all for criticizing each and every one of these governments, because they're all complicit in wrongdoing. Please, think about it. Think about escaping the matrix in that sense and in that regard of deciding and moving forward with what you can control, what's within your control. Forget what they're feeding you on CNN, for sure. I'm Josh Button. My thoughts for the day. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Come on back. I'm going to vent on this, I'm sure, a few more times. And hopefully we see some things change for the better sooner than later. Thanks for joining me. Have a good day. I'll talk to you all soon.